All right, very good. And thank you, Angela. And thank you for inviting me to talk about the tax career. I'm a big, big, big fan about that. If you've got any questions, put it in the Q&A and we'll address them as we go. And I'm looking forward to answering your questions if you have any questions. And looking forward to the June 3rd presentation. That's my good friend, Megan Thompson. She is a forensic accountant. And if you've seen the new movie, the Ben Affleck movie called The Accountant 2, well, daytime he's a forensic accountant, nighttime he's an assassin. Well, we're not assassins at night, but there are some hints of what they do for a living. Well, the accounting profession is very, very diverse. All kinds of like forensics, there's CFO, controller, cybersecurity, all those kind of jobs. Well, I happen to discover tax. I love tax. I really love what I do. So I'm like, especially very passionate about that kind of work. So anyway, let's get started on this presentation about the tax professional career and hopefully inspire some of you to consider this as a career because I have to admit to you, I love my job. I enjoy what I do, and I'm really lucky that I found it. I'm a son of immigrants, so it wasn't something that's a family tradition or family business. I know a lot of people, are multi-generation in what they do because dad was a judge or mom was the mayor. Sorry, we were poor immigrants. Well, my family parents were poor immigrants to this country, um, so I didn't have that family background, and somehow I found this. I learned about this. I actually learned about it from some friends. Actually, it was my Sunday school teacher. He was a CPA, and I asked him, "What is a CPA?" So he kind of taught me what that is, and I thought, "What a cool job that is." So, and we stayed in touch, and he really helped me out a lot. So this has been great. So a little bit about myself. So I have quite a few letters behind my name. So I have a lot of credentials behind my name. And credentials are kind of a certification issued by an organization to kind of let the public know that, hey, I know what I'm doing, right? And of course, what we're particularly interested in are legitimate certifications. And I think I have very legitimate ones. Now I'm going to go through my certifications and we'll go through what other tax ones are. So there's a lot of certifications out there. Some you just write a check. So to me, those aren't really worth as much. But if you have to take a real difficult test, meet experience requirements, then it could be a bit more legitimate. So let me walk through my credentials to give you an idea of what my background is. So I'm a certified public accountant, and that's a license. It's a license to practice issued by the state of California. So every state regulates their CPAs, certified public accountants. And later on, I'll go into a little more detail of what you need to become a CPA. Requires a certain number of college units, certain coursework, and of course, a real difficult 3-day test, plus experience. The next credential I have is the Personal Financial Specialist, and that's issued by the American Institute of CPAs. That involves a test you have to take. It's a 2-day test, experience requirement, and I needed letters of reference from my clients, 3 clients, that says that, yes, Larry does financial planning. And also I needed 3 letters of reference from fellow CPAs who can say that, yes, Larry does financial planning. So you need to get letters of reference and be in good standing. The next credential is Certified Financial Planner, CFP. PFS is the CPA version of the CFP. CFP is an independent organization, and again, you take a 2-day test. You need a certain amount of work experience and and to be of good character. So to qualify for that. The next one's enrolled agent. We're going to spend a lot of time on enrolled agent because that's a tax license issued by the IRS. It's a national license. It's not regulated by the states. So if you have an EA, you can practice almost anywhere in the country. It's a 3-part test, 3 parts, business, individuals, and ethics. Um, and then the IRS does a background check, criminal check, make sure you're caught up on your taxes and that you don't cheat on your taxes and those kinds of things. The next credential is the United States Tax Court Practitioner. So in the United States, we have a court called the Tax Court. It's a specialty court that deals with disputes with the federal government regarding your taxes. The judges in tax court are all tax experts and they know a lot about taxes. So that's all they deal with is taxes here. Well, I'm not a lawyer. I didn't go to law school, but I passed a real difficult test. It's called the Tax Court Practitioner Exam. It's offered every 2 years. It's usually in November in Washington, D.C., administered at the tax court. And it's the hardest 4 hour test you'd ever take. It has, I think, 4 parts to it: um, ethics, tax practice, procedure of tax court, and professional responsibility. The pass rate is super low. There are some years where zero people have passed. The year I passed in 2006. 6 people passed, and I knew all 6 of them because we happened to be in the same study group. And obviously, the study group worked out. Well, you have to study and study and study. So I'm not a lawyer, but I can represent clients in tax court. It's a lot of fun. Here in San Francisco, across the street from the library is the Federal Building, or a block away from the Federal Building is the Federal Building, Golden Gate Avenue. Well, in that building is where the San Francisco tax court's located. You check the calendar, you can actually sit in on cases. It's quite interesting. Not as exciting as the TV shows, but to me, as a tax nerd, I find it quite interesting. People have tax disputes with the government, and it's heard in the tax court, and they rule against or in your favor. And my last credential that I personally have is a state accredited estate planner, accredited estate planner, AEP. That's issued by the National Association of Estate Planning Councils. Um, the way to get it depends on your level of experience. I've been doing this for a long, long time, so I met the experience requirement, so I didn't have to have the coursework requirement. If you have less than 5 years experience, you have to take a number of courses to qualify for this. Then I needed letters of reference from allied professionals, lawyers, trust officers, CPAs, financial planners, and insurance agents. And they vouch for my good character and all that. So that's how that works. Oh, regarding the tax court bar exam, you passed the super hard test. I needed another person who's part of the tax court bar to attest to my good character. So that's what you need. So good character is a very important feature here. I'm located here in Redwood Shores. I was born in San Francisco, but I'm living in Redwood Shores, and I've been doing this since 1986, and now I just do a lot of speaking. I also do some teaching. For my undergrad, I went to Berkeley and majored in business with an accounting and finance emphasis. And here in San Francisco, I got my master's in tax at Golden Gate University, which I highly recommend if you want to be really serious in tax, is to get the master's degree. Even though you go through the master's degree, there's a lot to learn. There's a lot to learn. Tax is a huge field. All right. Okay, right now I don't see any questions, right? Do I have any questions so far? No questions. Okay, let me just check here if I have any questions. All right, good. So here's the outline of what we're going to do. We're going to start with who are tax professionals? And then we're going to talk about what do tax professionals do? What do they do? And well, best practices for working on tax pros. That was when it came to how to work with a tax pro. And I don't think I have it in this presentation. Um, how not to work with a tax professional, how do you get on their list? So that's the outline. But anyway, let's start with who are tax professionals? Who are they? Well, they can have different designations. They can be a CPA. Now, not all CPAs are tax experts. Just because you have a CPA doesn't mean that person's qualified to do your taxes. I had quite a few CPAs as my clients because they were CFOs, they were controllers, they were CEOs, whatever. They happen to be CPAs, but they're not tax experts. So that's a very common mistake. People think that you're a CPA, you know taxes. Not necessarily. A good percentage are, but not everyone. Just like being an accounting major. My brother-in-law was saying Was my sister-in-law happened to be an accounting major, and he thinks, well, you're an accounting major, you should be able to do our taxes. Well, that's not necessarily true, right? If you don't have the proper education. So, yeah, a lot of tax professionals are CPAs, but not all CPAs are tax professionals. Enrolled agents. Now, enrolled agents are tax experts. It's a tax only license. It's only tax. It's issued by the IRS. It allows you to represent clients before the IRS. So it gives you all the rights and privileges to do that, just like a CPA, just like an attorney. Now, in California, we have something called CTEC, the California Tax Education Council. So in California, this is specific to California, you can prepare tax returns for pay professionally with a CTEC license. You don't have to be an enrolled agent. You don't have to be a CPA, but this is California. And we'll go into a little more detail what the education requirements are, all that. Now, unfortunately, there are quite a few unenrolled and unlicensed people out there doing taxes. As a customer, I probably would stay away from them because they might not have the educational background. They might not be up to date. They might not be trained. And they're the ones who tend to get in trouble a lot. You read about cases where people are being ripped off, right? Or refunds are getting stolen. And those tend to be unlicensed, unenrolled people. So I have a difficult time recommending them. So anyway, but they're out there. Unfortunately, they're out there. But I'd recommend that if you want to be a tax pro, don't be one of them. Of course, tax attorneys are tax professionals. Also, some do tax returns, but mostly they do what's called representation work. They'll represent a client in tax court, or they'll represent a client with the IRS appeals or the California tax appeals and those kind of things. And they tend to charge more, but I would prefer a professional tax preparer to prepare your tax returns. Well, speaking of that, what do tax professionals do? What do they do? Well, it's not just doing tax returns, right? Um, Preparation is one of the many things a tax professional does. You see that most. I mean, during tax season, you meet with them to get your taxes done. This is a what's called a compliance responsibility. So, what is it? It's preparing your income tax return, your business tax return. Maybe there's a lot of taxes out there. There's sales taxes that needs a tax return. There could be some property tax issues. Payroll taxes, that's a big deal, right? Look at your paycheck. You see how much money is taken out of your paycheck. That's payroll. Well, there's payroll taxes. And there's all kinds of tax returns. There's 1040s for individuals, 1120s for corporations, 1065s for partnerships, and 1041s for trusts, and thousands of other forms. But, some people only do that. Nothing wrong with that. But, it's perfect for someone who's very detailed oriented, someone who's good at catching details. Um, I, I got turned on to this because someone was speaking at a career conference about accounting. He goes, if you like puzzles, this is the job for you. So if you like solving puzzles or putting puzzles together, it's something to consider doing, right? Okay. Um, so that's a bulk of the work that we do. Bulk of work. For me, it was year round because you're busy from January to April 15th. That's when taxes are due. However, can you get them all done? Probably not because people can have missing information that we need, or people just put it off and all that. So you can do what's called an extension. And the extension gives you more time to get taxes done. That takes you all the way to October 15th. So taxes can be a year-round business. It could be a year-round business. You do that year-round. Okay, so that's the preparation side of things. That's doing tax returns and all that. You can make good money doing that. You can make good money doing that. Another area that tax professionals do is what's called representation. Representation. What does representation mean? You are acting on behalf of a client. And so there could be an audit. An audit doesn't mean you did anything wrong. It just means the government has questions. Yeah, they want to verify the numbers on the tax return. There's IRS audits, that's for the federal return. There's sales tax audits, like you go to your favorite restaurant, right? what do you pay when you pay for your meal? You pay sales tax. Well, the state wants to make sure you're paying the right amount. So audits is just to verify information. What are your receipts? What's your backup information? Did your client make this all up? So what kind of proof do we have, right? Bank statements and those kind of things. So that's audits, also known as examinations. It could be an office audit, which means you go to the IRS office, you go on behalf of the client. I've done this long enough where I don't recommend ever sending the client. Leave them home. Don't ever bring your client because they talk too much. They'll say too much. They'll say kind of things that are inappropriate. Um, have you guys seen the movie Everything Everywhere at Once? Yeah, it was about an IRS audit. Yeah, Jamie Lee Curtis plays IRS agent. The Michelle Yeoh character owned a laundry business and she was getting audited. It was pretty close, except for the ending where they got into a fight and the police came and all that. So that doesn't happen in real life. But the messy desk, the receipts and all that. Um, Michelle Yeoh also brought her dad, which is probably not a good idea. He was sitting there falling asleep. But everything everywhere at once. That's an audit. That was a image of an audit. Okay, so audits are examinations. Some people call it a financial colonoscopy, but they'll say, "Hey, can you prove your meals and entertainment? Can you prove you drove this many miles? Can you prove that you paid this much for rent? Whatever expenses you're claiming on the tax return, and document and prove it." Okay, that's audits. Next are what's called collections. Um, believe it or not everyone pays their taxes. Most of us have taxes taken out of our paychecks in the form of withholding, and at tax time we get a refund. So, for those of you, that's probably not a problem. But collections are for people who don't pay their taxes. They owe money on their tax return, they don't pay it, or they have a business but they didn't make their estimated payments, and for whatever reason. Or in one of my cases, it was a family business, a well-known San Francisco family business. I think they were on their third generation. Grandpa started the business, and my client was just a sales guy, but his brothers, one was the CEO, one's the CFO, but they didn't pay their payroll taxes for their workers. Don't know why they didn't pay it. Well, guess what? Um, IRS says you got to pay it, and then there's nasty penalties if you don't do that. Because my client was a shareholder, they said you're all responsible. He owed $550,000. Yikes, $550,000. And it's not his fault, not my client's fault, but because he was a shareholder for the family business, he's also held responsible. It was the CEO brother and the CFO brother, two idiots who caused this mess. But in collections, what did I do for them? What did I do for them? I negotiated a payment plan with the IRS. He owes 550K. He can't pay it. He doesn't make that much money. Um, so I negotiated a payment plan of $100 a month. Yeah, yeah, $100 a month. So I said, just keep paying $100 a month towards this $550,000 bill. Why did we do that? Because there's what's called a 10-year statute of limitations. What that means is the IRS has 10 years to collect from you. I don't know about you, but 10 years can go pretty quick. And it did. He kept doing $100 a month. 10 years came, bam, that money, the bill disappeared. So he didn't owe it. Well, for the idiot brothers, they still owe it. But for my client, didn't because we negotiated an installment plan for that. So for audits, I would go to the IRS or the IRS would come to my office and I answered their questions, show the receipts and all those sorts of things. So, it's kind of fun. Sometimes you play the Jedi Master. You just tell the IRS agent, those are not the receipts you want to see. You don't want to look over there. Those are not the expenses you want to audit. Trust me, they're correct. So sometimes we do play Jedi mind tricks, and it works. It's kind of fun. So, like I said, I love doing this. It's a lot of fun. Appeals, appeals are you go to the appeals division of the IRS because at the audit or collections, they still said no, we don't agree. So you go to appeals, the next level. And if that doesn't work, then you go to court. But That's what representation is. Representation is acting on behalf of people. It's kind of like those TV shows where lawyers are representing their clients and all that. That's what it is. It's a lot of fun. I think it's a lot of fun. Um, Planning. That's the third tier or third leg of what tax professionals do. We do tax returns, we represent clients, we answer questions for them, and or we do planning. Oh, I love doing that too. Planning is strategizing, strategies. Client says, Larry, I want to buy a house. I said, great, let's figure out how to do it. And that's what we do to help clients. Or, hey, I'm going to sell my apartment building in San Francisco. It's going to sell for a lot of money. What can I do to reduce the tax bill? And that's what I would do to help them with some strategies, or how to put money away for retirement, how to help save money to help kids pay for college. What else do we do? Business transactions, like a client says, hey, I'm selling my business. What can I do? Or I'm starting a business. What do I need to know? What do I need to do? It's a lot of fun, right? So you're involved with people's lives and all kinds of planning issues. And the thing about taxes, you're involved. If you like people, this is the job for you. If you don't like people, there's other facets of this job you can do if you don't like people. But if you like people, you're involved in their lives. Kids are born, clients die. They all need our help, right? If they die, we have estate taxes to deal with. If you have a kid that's born, well, there's college planning, there's all kinds of things. And tax laws are changing all the time. You see that in the news, right? You watch the news. Congress just passed the House of Representatives just passed the proposed tax bill. Now it's going to go to the Senate. We got to stay on top of that to know what's going on. Okay, let's talk about a little more specifics here. Enrolled agents, and I want to talk about enrolled agents because what's the beauty of getting the enrolled agent license? You don't need a bachelor's degree. No, you don't. You just need to be smart. You need to be curious. You need to do a lot of reading. Read the IRS instructions, read the booklets, keep taking classes, kind of my classes, lots of education, or hopefully work for a good office where they can train you and teach you. So enrolled agents. Enrolled agents as a job title has been around since the end of the Civil War. So what did the original enrolled agents do? Their job was to count the number of horses that people had after the Civil War, right? And then there's a tax on that and all those kind of things. So that's where it got started. Also, enrolled agents were involved with war claims, because the Civil War destroyed a whole chunk of the America. So people told the government, "Hey, look, you turned my backyard into a battlefield. You owe me money." That's what enrolled agents did, was to help calculate what the government owed them. Hey, I lost 5 horses, things like that. So enrolled agents are tax professionals who have demonstrated specific competence in tax matters or are granted unlimited rights to practice before the IRS as agents or legal representative of taxpayers. That's a pretty cool responsibility. Of course, clients had to give you that responsibility, but I think it's pretty darn cool that you can act on behalf of your clients. Well, because you would have more education than them. You don't want your clients to be yapping away, telling all kinds of things to the IRS. The IRS says, oh, tell me more. Oh, you have more unreported income? Tell me more about that. So enrolled agents can work and communicate with the IRS on all matters regarding the client's rights, privileges, and liabilities under laws and regulations administered by the IRS. And we're in California. The state franchise tax board recognizes the same thing. So federal and state level. So how to become an EA? Well, you have passed 3 parts of the enrolled agent exam. You can go to the IRS website, just type in irs.gov and just type in enrolled agent. In the search box, it'll take you to the page to learn more about this. So it's 3 parts to the exam. Individuals, business, practice, and procedure. And each part is 100 multiple choice questions, and they give you 3.5 hours to complete the exam. I teach a review course. So the review course, you just practice, 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 so that you can get the time down to be able to pass it. but there's no education requirement or no experience requirement. You just pass that. No bachelor's degree required. Of course, there's no references from clients, but the IRS will do a criminal background and tax compliance check. Criminal background, do you don't have any outstanding warrants? Have you been convicted of a felony, especially financial related? And tax compliance means, are you caught up with your taxes, right? So no missing tax returns or no balances due or whatever. You have a clean tax history. Okay. This is national information. So in the Bay Area, it's much higher, much higher. So add, I don't know, 30% or so more to it. So, if you're just a tax preparer, no license, unlicensed, the national average is around 44 grand a year. However, once you get your enrolled agent license, instead of 44,000 a year, it's about 71,000 a year. Yeah. So by passing this test, you're letting people know that I have the competency to do your taxes. That's why it's so important. These are national numbers here in terms of salaries that you can make, starting at 71, after a few years, 84,000, 94,000, 4 to 6 years, 79 is 99,000, 10 years or more is 111,000. These are national numbers. So here in the Bay Area, they're actually higher because we can charge more. And also, we have a lot of wealthy people in the Bay Area with very complicated finances, which means complicated taxes, which means we can charge more. When you can charge more, you make more. Isn't that great? All right, that's the enrolled agent. Okay, how about certified public accountant? It's licensed by the California Board of Accountancy under the Board of Consumer Affairs, which licenses everybody else, contractors, beauticians, and all the other licenses. So to be a CPA, you're going to need a bachelor's degree or higher. And it's at least 150 semester units, which is basically 4 years plus a master's degree. 150. That's being changed because we have a severe shortage of accountants right now. We have a severe shortage. So if you go major in accounting, you will get a job. And here's the thing, you will never be unemployed. Yeah, it's true. You'll never be unemployed. And you'll make enough money to buy a house. I think those are really good financial considerations for the job. 150 semester units overall. 24 has to be in accounting. 24 has to be business related. 20 in accounting studies subjects, and 10 in ethics. Yeah, so those are the course requirements. Now, what a lot of people do is they go to college, they can get a liberal arts degree like poli sci or whatever. They go back to community college to get these missing units to qualify for the CPA exam. So you can't even take the test unless you have this. And then to get the license, you need at least 12 months of general accounting experience. So your employer will sign off on the form saying, hey, it's been here for at least a year, full time. Then you get your license. Okay, so I took this from the Board of Accountancy website. Education requirements can be completed at community colleges, universities, or other institutions of learning. So no, you don't have to get a master's degree. You can have a bachelor's degree in anything, and you can pick up the missing units at a community college. That will save you a lot of money. So bachelor's degree, 24 semester units accounting subjects, 24 units in business. So accounting subjects are accounting, auditing, external or internal reporting, financial accounting, financial statement analysis, fraud, taxation. Business subjects are business administration, business communication, business law, business management, business related law courses offered by an accredited law school. You can do that. Computer science and information sciences, economics, finance, marketing, mathematics, and statistics. So, basically, if you get a business degree, those are courses you'll be taking anyway. You don't have to have a business major, but if you're going to major in business, you're going to take these classes anyway. It's going to be part of that. Then you got to take the CPA exam. I think it's what, 3 days or so, 4 hours for each section. You have 30 months to pass all four sections. So you took part one, and then you got busy, but you got to get it done within 30 months. And of course, they're going to do a criminal background check by the California Department of Justice and the FBI, and then you'll get fingerprinted too. So you'll be in the database. For a CPA exam, three required core section. Now they kind of changed the exam. So you have AUD, which is ethics, assessing risk and audits, REG, business law and tax, and FAR, financial reporting. So these are the required sections you have to take, plus one discipline section. BAR, business analysis, ISC, information systems, TCP, taxation. So makes sense to me because I was only interested in tax. I wasn't too interested in the computer stuff. So yeah, this is great. So for me, I'll take the three parts I have to take, right? Audit, regulatory, and financial reporting. You have to do those, right? And I would take tax because I love tax. I love tax. So that's what I would personally do if you want to take the CPA exam. All right, again, these are national numbers. These are national numbers. So for here in the Bay Area, I would bump it up a little bit here. So public accounting. Public accounting is when you work for an accounting firm and your customers are the public. They could be small businesses, big businesses, and people, right? That's public accounting. You work for a whole bunch of clients. So entry level is around 60K. That sounds about right on the low end. And you can go up from there. You're a junior accountant, 1 to 3 years, 64. Seniors around 78. Managers 110. Senior managers 161. In the Bay Area, shift every box to the left a little bit. Because I think some firms are starting at 80K now or something like that. So you shift this over a little bit. Senior managers would be 200 and above, something like that. Depends on the practice. Depends how big the practice is. Depends on how profitable the practice is, and how valuable you are, right? The more valuable you are, the more skills you have, the more you can bring, the more efficient you are. Hey, they're more than happy to pay you, if you get the work done, right? If you're really slow and inefficient, you're not going to get paid as much. And then there's private accounting. That means working for a company. You can be an accountant for the city and county of San Francisco, for example, or you can be an accountant for, I mean, a big corporation like the Gap or United Airlines or something like that. And so the pay structure is a little bit different, could be a little bit higher depending, again, the company, right? Depending on they're publicly traded, are they profitable? Again, what skills do you bring? So, the good news is in accounting, you'll never be unemployed. There's always a job. There's a shortage. There's demand. It's prestigious. I think it's awesome. Okay, so lots of things there. So CTEC, CTEC is the California Tax Education Council. So that's for people who don't want to get the EA for whatever reason. And it was authorized by what's called the Tax Preparer Acts. And it makes sure that non-exempt tax preparers are educated and bonded. So you have to get a bond, which is not that expensive, and you have to have certain hours of education. Now, if you're an EA, a CPA, an attorney, no, you don't need to register of CTEC. But if you're none of those, then you need to register a CTEC. It's a great entry level. No education requirement. You don't have to have a college degree, associates or bachelor's or master's. No college degree required. A lot of people are CTECs. A lot of people doing taxes out there are CTECs. The education requirement is 20 hours a year, 10 hours of federal tax law, 3 hours of federal tax update, 2 hours of ethics, 5 hours of California. So that's what I teach. I like to teach that and helps fulfill the education requirements. Okay, let's talk about the work we do. A little more detail here. So tax preparation, that's a bulk of what tax professionals do, right? And I love it. We all use tax software. There's different types of software out there. Personally, I stay away from the really cheap ones. You want a software that's been around for a long time, with lots of users, so there's some stability there. But software does not think for you, okay? AI is not going to think for you. AI is not going to solve your problem. It's a tool. It helps us get our job done. but it's not going to do our job. So software is a calculator. It helps us figure out the forms and all that. But you need to check them. You need to check them very carefully, make sure they're correct. So you don't just close your eyes, hit the send button, and go from there. You have to actually read the returns and see what they say. So when you're preparing returns to individuals and businesses, right? It's not just federal taxes, but state taxes and possibly some local taxes. But your job is to collect the information, and that's our client's job, right? Is to gather information for us. They think that that is tax preparation. That's just the beginning. Gathering information is just the beginning. The rest is the analysis and printing out the forms. And as a tax preparer, you got to be on top of all the rules and regulations, all the latest tax law changes to be able to take advantage of deductions, credits, making sure our clients pay the least amount of taxes possible. And that is legal. It is legal to pay the least amount of taxes allowed by law. Tax evasion, that's illegal. Or tax cheating, that's illegal. All right, so that's the preparation side of things. When it comes to tax planning, now, not everybody does this, but you can do it. I do it. I charge by the hour for it, but you give them strategic advice to clients on minimizing their tax liabilities. Sometimes I meet people after they've done something and say, oh no, if we could have done this a little differently, you would have paid a whole lot less in taxes. And also, working with a financial planner, financial advisor, and help them with tax efficient investment strategies. I'm not the investment expert. Thank God I'm not a stock expert. I don't know when stocks are high, low, or whatever. That's not my responsibility. Mine are figuring out the tax planning for that. But tax planning means getting involved with every major transaction our client gets to do. They buy a house. They want to buy a house. How can I do that? Or they sell their house. What happens when I sell my house? What kind of taxes do I need to pay when that happens? What are the consequences of selling a house? Or I want to buy a business or I want to sell a business. There's different ways of doing that can really save you a lot of money. Or they're going to make large purchases, large equipment purchases. Like I'm buying this big machine. Like I had a printer client who was buying this big press, right? There's different ways of buying it that can be more advantageous to you, depending what the tax laws are at that time. It's a lot of fun to strategize with it. Life transitions, unfortunate, right? Getting married, that does affect your taxes. Getting divorced, that affects your taxes too. Um, Getting divorced is tricky, right? There's some ethical issues there. Ethical issues of who am I representing? I can't represent both sides, right? So ethics is a very important part of the tax profession. Stay on top of your ethics. We have a 2-hour ethics requirement every year. We have to take an ethics course every year. Or if you have children, right? Kids, they're not cheap. So how do we plan for that? Are they going to go to college? Are they not going to college? What are their future plans? What kind of inheritance are they going to get or not, right? So planning is just strategy. It's proactive. It's something you do before the year is over versus after the year is over. That's just preparation. No, what we do there. So in terms of representation, that's the third leg of things that tax pros do. A lot of people like doing that. It's a lot of fun. So helping resolving disputes with the government, right? The government says, you owe us money. And you're saying, your client says, no, I don't. Yes, you do. No, you don't. Well, let's check to see what it is. Negotiating a settlement. Kind of like my client owed 550K. He couldn't pay it, but I was able to negotiate $100 a month and let that go until the 10-year statute of limitations expires. Boom, his bill disappears. Um, I do that a lot, like sometimes I'll say, hey, my client can offer you 10 grand. Can we close this for that? They'll say, sure. You know, so it's a lot of fun. Now, is this something you can do right out of school or no experience? No, no. You need time to learn. You need time to build some confidence. And it's kind of nice to work with people who do that and watch them how to do it. That's the best way to learn, right? Handling audits, don't let clients do audits. We need to do the audits because they never get it right. Um, because we know how to prepare for it, we know how to respond to it. And if you've heard, if you've heard, there's a lot of turmoil at the IRS right now because of the new administration. We had something called Doge who's been firing everybody. And I think they lost about 20,000 people. That's a lot of people to lose. So there's fewer people to get the work done. So us tax professionals are way more important now because we help them get their work done. You know, if you want to make an IRS agent happy, help them close the case quickly. They will love you for it, right? Collections. Some people like doing that. I'm not a big fan of doing that because it's no fun dealing with people who owe money, and I need to make sure I get paid first. Pay me first. A lot of times they just there's some psychological issues there. For some reason, they're not paying their taxes. And I had a lawyer. He didn't make that much money, but he's somebody that owed over $1 million. And that happens when you don't pay taxes for 15 years. Don't know how that happened. He just didn't pay his taxes for about 15 years. And, the IRS is not too happy with you if you owe a lot of money. And with the new rules right now, your passport gets suspended. So we can help our clients, right? It's like you get a panic call from a client. Hey, Larry, I'm at SFO. They won't let me fly because I owe back taxes. Yeah, that's true. If you owe more than $50,000, um, they suspend your passport. You can't fly. However, we can help resolve that by negotiating a payment plan with the IRS. Even though you might still owe the money, but if you have a payment plan, you can travel now. So yes, we help people travel. Some people get stuck at the airport because they owe back taxes. The government's not going to let you go if you owe back taxes. So there are areas of specialization, and it depends on your personal personality, right? What do you like to do? Some people love doing corporate tax, either publicly, which means you have lots of corporate clients, or you work at a corporation, a tax department of a corporation. And some tax departments are huge. I remember visiting the Chevron tax department, right? That was literally, ooh, was it a whole floor? It was a whole floor of people. Or I was at the phone company's office and they had a whole floor. All these people did was depreciation. That's just one line on the financial statement, one number on the tax return. But it took a whole floor of people to do it and their computers, right? Nonprofit tax. A lot of nonprofits out there, like the YMCA or Salvation Army or whatever. Um, Nonprofit tax is a different type of accounting than for-profit tax. So you need to understand those kind of things. And that's a different specialty. International tax is wow, that's a pretty interesting specialty because the world's was getting smaller. I'm not sure what's going on now, but it's, I mean, different countries have different tax rules, and you have people from other countries come here, or Americans go overseas. There's international tax consequences. I used to work at a big accounting firm, and there's a person in the office. His specialty was tariffs, customs and tariffs. I really, yeah, that was his specialty. Guess what? Today, super important job. There's a super hard 4-hour test to take to be a licensed customs broker. Um, to bring things in from overseas and all that. Can you imagine that? You can write your own paycheck if you have that specialty. It wasn't something I paid any attention to until recently, right? Tariffs are really complicated. So, for example, this tariff guy, he's the tariff consultant, so he worked with clients. So, for example, this is just an example. If you shipped in flashlights from overseas, from China, wherever. If it's a fully assembled flashlight, you bring it here in the United States, then you package it and it goes to your retailers, right? Well, there's a certain amount of tariff you're going to have to pay on that. However, if you unscrew the top and it's not a fully assembled flashlight, but it's components of a flashlight, you got the bulb, you got the lens, you got the body or whatever, guess what? The tariff's lower. So that's what the expertise is with that. So you hear stuff in the news. There's always an expert about that, how to save our clients money. What can we do, right? Estate planning. Ooh, that's a huge area, right? Um, you know, Grandma's got $10 million. Well, what's the best way of planning for that, right? Or, How do parents give their assets to their kids? Or do they do it while they're still alive? Or do they wait till they pass away? Or do they give their estate to charity? So estate planning is a huge area of specialization. So there's lots of specializations. And some people only do one thing. And that happens too, right? Okay, work environment. Let's talk about work environment. So there's lots of different work environments. There's the public accounting, which means you're an accounting firm, you service clients. We have all kinds of clients. I had some fun ones when I worked for a big accounting firm. We had the Oakland A's. That was so cool. Uh, if you ever look at a baseball team's tax return or any sports team's tax return, they're always trading players, and they can make big bucks on that. It's kind of sad when you see a player's name and they lost money on them. That happens too. But you have all kinds of clients, and that's kind of fun. I had my own practice, had all kinds of clients. I had some Hollywood clients, which means I get to go walk on the red carpet and see off movie premieres. Lots of fun, right? You go visit clients. A lot of clients have interesting things that they do. You have a winery client. I used to do the tax return for Marine World, USA, back when it was a nonprofit. I don't think it is anymore, but back then it was. So I had to do the tax return, and I had a chance to visit the animals, and we had the orangutan hang out with us in the accounting office. That was a lot of fun. She would take a pen and start writing on our papers. So, that can happen. Sometimes your clients make cool things. You can see the factory, see things. So it's kind of fun. I was pretty lucky. I never had to go check the manure pile. Some of my colleagues had to go check the manure pile because that's an inventory asset, right? Cows create manure and then they can sell that for money. So, how much manure is there? I didn't have to do that. A tax office. You can have your own tax office, right? Big one or small one. Work for a corporation, government agencies, the IRS, the Franchise Tax Board. The federal government's a little bit in turmoil right now, so unfortunately, it's kind of hard to get a job there. And I don't know what's going to happen. Hopefully, things will stabilize because they really need people. They're short-handed. I don't know why they kept laying off people, but they're short-handed. We want competent people running the agencies, right? We want smart, competent people. They're not the enemy. We work together. They're not the enemy. But government's a great place, great way for training. Like I talked about international tax. If you want to learn about international tax, work in international tax at the IRS because you'll be interviewing CEOs and CFOs. If you work for an accounting firm, you'll be interviewing the accountants. So you be an independent consultant or be an independent tax expert, have your own business. So lots of different types of work environment. Find the one that works the best for you. Skills are important. Analytical skills. You got to have some analytical skills. Good attention to detail. We catch things, right? And of course, you have to understand accounting and taxes and constantly stay on top of that. And I think one of the most important skills is true for almost every job is communication skills. Written communication, know how to write, know how to talk, know how to listen. Communication skills are super, super, super. Did I say super? Yes, super important. Well, there's similar jobs too, right? There's, okay, I don't like doing taxes. Well, hey, how about financial planner? It's a different type of job. Believe it or not, financial planner has the number one job satisfaction rating. So people who are financial planners has the highest job rating. How cool is that? Taxes, I think, are pretty high too. Well, it's not super high because people kind of get annoyed of how hard they work during tax season. Yeah, tax season is not easy, but hey, it didn't bother me because I really enjoyed doing it. If you really enjoy doing it, you be an auditor, auditor for a corporation, auditor for the government, or independent auditor. So auditing means checking numbers and sometimes finding ways of doing things more efficiently. Bookkeeper. Bookkeeping is a great profession, huge need for that. And you can do it independently, make good money at it, right? Or be a financial analyst. You can do that for a corporation or for a company or for a financial firm that does financial analysis of other companies. Uh, become a spreadsheet jock, be really good at spreadsheets. So lots of jobs, lots of similar jobs. lots of aligned jobs. One thing I didn't put in this list here is private fiduciary, being a trustee. Um, that's a great second career for a lot of people, especially if you're very organized. So that's another one. Huge need for that. Huge need for that. Angela, I'll see if I can find a private fiduciary for you. I think I got someone for you to do one of these courses. I think it'd be kind of fun to learn about his job. Okay. And here's some links to get more information for enrolled agent. That takes you to the IRS website. The to be a CPA, that's through the California Board of Accountancy. And then CTEC, this takes you to the CTEC website. So to learn more, you can go to these links here. And also, um, if you're interested, there are professional associations for enrolled agent. We have the California Society of Enrolled Agents, and we have multiple chapters around here. Come to one of our meetings, get to meet us, talk to us, find out why we love our jobs. There's a CPA Society, California Society of CPAs, calcpa.org. You can look at their website. It's just an association, and you can learn about the diversity of the CPA careers, right? And then, and so there's professional groups, networking. You can learn more about it. Okay, I think this takes us to the last page here. So, Angela, I can stick around to answer any questions. I don't see any questions in the Q&A or in the chat, but we'll wrap it up. But if you got questions, I'm here for you guys, and I'm willing to answer anything.
Yeah, Larry, I have actually one question I was interested in.
Okay.
If you can go back and give your younger self one piece of career advice, what would it be?
Oh, well, I think for me would have been, when you're the first generation, there's a lot that I didn't know. I wasn't very sophisticated. My coworkers were because they're multi-generation here in the United States, right? Or they had family members who are professionals or they're upper middle class or whatever. So I think for me it would have been learning better interpersonal skills. I just didn't have that training because, you didn't really grow up in I grew up in a Chinese immigrant household. So, communication skills were not the strength there. So I think that's something I wish I learned a little bit more of how to be a little more diplomatic because I didn't know anything about that. I learned that along the way, right? I learned that along the way, communicating, how to write better, how to be a better writer. That's always a good thing. How to be a better speaker and a better listener. So I think those kind of skills I wish I learned earlier. That would have been a lot more helpful.
Thank you. That's actually interesting. Um, what what does a typical day look like while you're working as a maybe like an enrolled agent? What would you say a typical day is like?
You don't know. There really hasn't been a typical day. This is why it makes it so much fun, because you never know what phone call you're going to get. You never know what email you're going to get, right? And it's always someone with a problem or someone with a situation, and I don't have to watch soap operas on TV because they come rolling by my desk. There's something going on. People are calling you to solve their problems. So, during tax season, a typical day would be you start early and then you have a bunch of client appointments. Uh, in the past, I met people face to face that came into my office. Um, since the pandemic, we don't really do that anymore. We do it over Zoom, right? Do it over Zoom or do it over the phone or whatever. I think we do things more digitally now than we did. Um, and then of course you gotta get the tax returns done. So during tax season, meet with clients, get tax returns done, and then put them together and get them out to the client. Because the name of the game is the more tax returns you get done, the more money you make.
Thank you for answering that question, Larry.
Yeah.
Since we were talking about enroll agents, how did you prepare for the EA exams? Are there any resources or study tips that you'll recommend?
Yeah, there's a number of review courses you can take. Now the thing is though, if you have no tax education, if you have no tax background, I know people have done it. I know people have done it, but I don't really recommend, taking the e-exam code without any background or experience. But I know people have taken it. I know people have passed it. But the thing is, passing a test doesn't mean you're really that competent, right? It just means you passed the test. But there are review courses. The one I use is Gleim, Gleim. They offer a CPA review, which is what I use to pass a CPA exam, and they have an EA exam. And now it's online, so it's kind of interactive. You do the questions on the computer, so they have like a live mock test. So they kind of put you through what the testing experience is like, because when you get enough practice with it, then you get a whole lot better at it.
Oh, wow. Didn't know that. Thank you
Yep.
for recommending that.
Yeah.
Um, I have one final question since I don't see any in the Q&A. Um, what are the most challenging and rewarding parts of your job currently?
Most
Or when you
rewarding
were
part of the job is the money. It's good money, okay? It really is. It really is. So I really can't complain about that. And today you can make really good money because there's a shortage of a severe shortage. I get a lot of calls saying, "Hey, can you recommend somebody?" Oh, I wish I could. A lot of my friends are not taking on new clients. So there's a huge, huge amount of opportunity there. So the big advantage is the money. But you got to be good though. You got to prove your worth, prove your value. Now, I know there's a lot of people out there who charge a lot of money and they're horrible, so I wouldn't recommend them. And there's a lot of good people I know that don't charge enough, and that's the other thing too. So, um, I think it's. I mean, to be able to buy a house, I think that's a good thing, right? So,
for sure?
um, and what's your other part of your question?
Most challenging parts of your job.
Challenging is keeping up with things because the tax law changes every day, literally changes every day. So nothing more embarrassing than you tell a client something and then you're wrong because the law just changed. And that changes daily because we have court cases, we have IRS guidance, and right now we've got a new law working its way through Congress. So it's important to stay on top of things. That's a real important challenge. That's why we have all these books over here, right? Each one of these are different tax books. Oh,
Oh,
the red ones, that's the tax code
those are really thick books back then.
with really thin paper, very small type.
Oh, wow. Well, we're at the hour and I don't see any more questions. So I'd like to thank Larry for sharing your knowledge on all the tax professionals, especially the enroll agents and the CPA, and what other job careers that people can get into if they're interested in tax preparation. I'd like to thank everyone for joining. I hope you found this presentation informative and helpful to you. I'll be sending out a link to the recording along with a survey. You guys can fill out this anonymous survey. That would be great. Any feedback can help us improve in our programming. And with that, I hope to see you guys on the next Career Insight programming, which is on June 3rd on forensic accounting. With that, good luck, everyone, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Bye, everyone.
Great.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Larry.
Good luck.